Guys, welcome to a weekly story time. Before we get started, like this video, subscribe if you're not already, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think down below. All those things really do help us out here on YouTube. And if you want to help support the channel even further, help us continue to do what we do here, a link to our Patreon is down below. So on this week's story time, I want to talk through a recent correction I received, talk through the circumstances leading up to the correction itself, and how this really did end up having a positive impact on my relationship, but also on my own personal growth and development. So the circumstances leading up to this correction really boiled down to that I was having a pretty rough day. There were certain circumstances that created a lot of stress and just required me to really work hard to regulate myself so that I could show up in a meaningful way in this situation. Now, this was not between Coda and I. In fact, Coda could see that I was having a hard time with the situation, and he really was showing up throughout the day to offer me guidance and reassurance and support through just being there and trying to help me navigate the situation and just giving me, words of affirmation, words of encouragement, hugging me, doing all the things to just help support me through this. And it really was super helpful to have him there. I really enjoyed the fact that he was showing up to support me in such a meaningful way. And that really did help so much. But I was still struggling internally. Outwardly, had a really good attitude. My behavior was great. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was super respectful to Coda. And so outwardly, the expression of my mood and demeanor was exactly in line with the expectations. And it was exactly where I needed to be and what Coda wants from me and what he deserves from me. And so I don't think that he realized that I was having this internal struggle. But I just felt the weight of the stress that I was under. I felt the weight of having to regulate myself. And that really was kind of creating this internal struggle within me that as the day went on, as I became more and more mentally and emotionally exhausted from the stress and from, navigating this situation where I was having to really regulate myself and really, put a lot of effort into that process, my internal struggle just kind of grew. Now, Coda never saw this again because outwardly I was doing everything that I was supposed to do. I was having a really good attitude, a really good demeanor. And so I think that it took him by surprise later that night when I told him that I was really struggling, because typically when I struggle like this, it does show up in my outward expression, especially towards Coda. I typically start to not do what I'm supposed to do. I start to become slightly disrespectful or snippy or short, things that he would absolutely catch on to and address right away. But because those things weren't happening, I didn't realize how dysregulated I had become and how much I was struggling with my mood and demeanor, inwardly at least. And so I should have recognized what was happening, and I should have asked for correction way earlier than I did. But because this was something that had never happened before, I did not recognize that correction was what I actually needed until it was well into the evening. And what really cued me into the fact that, I really do need correction here is that when Coda was asking me to do things for him, which is very typical in our relationship, that's something that he does a lot. That's something that I enjoy being able to do for him. I enjoy being able to do what he asks me to do. I enjoy serving him. It's something that is a function of our relationship, and it's a way that I express my submission to him. So he was not doing anything out of the ordinary, but he was asking me to do some things for him. And I just felt this internal, I don't want to. And that's not normal for me. I hardly ever, almost never, have that internal struggle of just not wanting to do what I'm told. And that sounds like a very defiant attitude. And it is, but I don't think that defiance or, sass or just being obstinate was my motivation. I really think that I was just mentally and emotionally exhausted, and I really just had a strong desire to mentally check out. And that's still not a good attitude to have. That's still wrong. It is still defiance at the end of the day. And so when he was asking me to do things and I just was like, I don't want to, I got up and did them anyway. Outwardly, I was still submitting to him, but inwardly, I was struggling so hard. And after this happened a few times, I realized that I was really struggling with submitting and being soft towards Coda. And I was really struggling with just the desire to want to fulfill my role in the way that Coda deserves. And because I at that point recognized where the struggle was and what I was actually struggling with, I went to Coda. I asked if I could cuddle up next to him. He absolutely was like, yes, please come cuddle with me. And I cuddled with him for a minute and just tried to regulate so that I could have this conversation that I knew was going to be a hard conversation to have. We were talking through and I was just like, it was a really hard day today. And he's like, I know. And he's like, but I'm really proud of you for the way that you handled it. And that's when I told him, I was like, well, I agree that I did handle it much better than I ever have before. However, I am really struggling to be soft and submissive towards you. And he looked confused because he had not cued into that, because from his perspective, I was being respectful. I was, meeting expectations. I was doing what I was told. So he was like kind of confused by that because he had not kind of cued into that at all. Which is understandable because this is all an internal struggle. I was doing everything I could to make sure that I wasn't having an outward expression of bad attitude or bad behavior. And he's like, well, where's that coming from? And so I kind of explained to him, the internal struggle that I was feeling, the thought processes that I was having. And then I just asked him, I was like, can you help me? Can you help me be soft towards you? Can you help me submit to you? And that was me asking for correction. I don't think that he necessarily understood that right away. I do think that that did kind of click for him pretty soon after I said it. But when I initially said it, I don't think that completely registered that I was asking for correction. But I couldn't say the words. I don't know why. I was really struggling with asking just plainly, but I did ask, like, can you help me with this? Because I don't like feeling like this. I don't like feeling hardened towards you. I want to be soft towards you. I don't like struggling with my submission. I want submission to be easy. Can you help me? Can you help me do that? And he said, yes, I will help you. But then he didn't say anything else, and I was starting to just kind of have this sinking feeling of like, I'm not going to get what I need. But then almost immediately, it was a few seconds, which we've talked after, and I was like, that was you kind of struggling with your decision to offer correction, wasn't it? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I didn't necessarily want to have to do that, but I knew that that's what you needed, because a few seconds later, he's like, in order to help you be soft and submissive towards me, in order to help you do that, we're going to go out and do a correction. And I said, yes, sir. And we immediately got up, came out to the studio, because this is where we do our spankings, because it offers us the privacy that we need. And so we came out here, he sat me down, he talked through the importance of my submission, the importance of being soft towards him. He told me that he really wanted me to focus my mind towards that goal during the correction, that he wants me to focus on being soft, being submissive towards him, that he wants me to focus on, accepting his decisions and, just submitting to his authority. And so that is what I did. I looked at this as an opportunity to really kind of just shed away all of the stress, to let go of all that stress, to let go of, all of the mental struggle that I had been dealing with. I just really looked at this correction as an opportunity to kind of start fresh and just let all of the negativity of the day go, and really allowing myself to be soft and vulnerable to Coda as my husband, to allow myself to submit to him again in the way that honors our relationship, that honors his authority, and honors my desire to hold my role in my relationship. And so he had me get in position, because I had struggled without asking for correction, that he knew that I needed a harder correction. And so he definitely did deliver a correction that was reflective of what I needed in that moment. So he started with our leather paddle, and he does 1.5 minutes on each side with our leather paddle. And, that is our least severe implement, but it's not easy to take. And to be honest, after the leather paddle was done, I was really just ready to be done. I mentally was just like, okay, that's enough. I'm good now. But of course, that's not what happened, because that's not the end of a correction. And Coda knew that I needed to kind of be put back into place, back on track, back on course. And he knew that that was going to require more than just a couple minutes with the leather paddle. I never know what implements he's going to use for correction. And so after the leather paddle was done, he came back over. He always sets the implement onto my skin so that I have a way to kind of halfway mentally prepare for what's coming. And so I felt the strap kind of on my skin, and I was just like, I got really nervous about it because I know what that feels like now. It is such a strong sensation. It definitely is the most severe sensation to me. Like our little split strap, our TAWs, it's a lot to take. And so as soon as I felt that on my skin, I became really nervous. And I just buried my head into the pillow that I have, and I was just like, I don't want this. But the timer started. He does a minute with the strap, and it hurts so much. But I realized as he was doing it, I realized that this is what I really need in order to feel under his authority, in order to get back to the place of softness that I need to be. I kind of needed that desire to regulate myself, to do it on my own, to, check out and not fulfill my role in my relationship. I need all of that to be driven out of me. And quite frankly, the fastest and easiest way to do that is a good strapping, because it hurts and it puts me back into perspective, and it makes me realize that I have responsibilities and I still need to fulfill them. And I need to look towards my head of household to help me do that. And I need to look towards him to help me regulate, to help me understand my role and my responsibilities. And I need to look to him for support and guidance. He finished the minute with the strap, and I mean, I was just a mess. I always cry in spankings, but especially after he's done with the strap, I am just crying. I'm a mess. I'm just so remorseful for the inward attitude that I allowed to grow in me, because I had several points throughout the day that I could have come to him and asked for correction. Now, when I request correction, he may or may not use the more severe implements, but if it gets to a point where he can tell that I had several points to be able to ask for correction and I neglected that, then the correction is going to be more severe, just because it needs to be at that point. So after the strap, he used our curly maple oval paddle, and that paddle is so stingy, and it has such a different sensation than the strap. It is definitely not as hard to take in the moment, but it creates a very lasting sting and impact. And where he targets the strap and where he targets the oval paddle is kind of the same area. And so when he spanks me with the oval paddle immediately after the strap, it kind of just drives the sensation of the strap like further in. And I don't know how to describe that other than it just makes it personified, or it just makes it heightened, right? It makes the sensation more prominent and makes me much more aware of where the strap landed as the paddle is landing. And then the paddle is creating its own pattern of impact and its own sensation, which is super stingy, super hard to kind of handle. And it just created such a powerful experience, because my mental and emotional process through this was really yielding to Coda, submitting to not only the spanking, but submitting to him and his authority, and really understanding that he was putting me through these particular implements in this particular order for a reason. And because he knew that it was good for me, because he knew that that's what I needed, and because he was making a decision based on what he wanted me to experience through this, so that I could get back to where I needed to be. And so it was really just trusting his decision making. It was trusting him to lead me back to where I needed to be. And it was submitting to his authority. I came out of that spanking just ready to be soft towards Coda again. I came out of that spanking fully aware and understanding where I went wrong during the day. I had not realized until after the spanking that I really did earn it. Not because of my outward behavior, but because I allowed myself to struggle without coming to my head of household for help. And this is kind of the point of personal growth that I saw within myself, because this is not something that I have ever had to face, because typically my outward behavior is affected, and it's very easy to understand, okay, my behavior was wrong, therefore correction is warranted. But to understand that because my inward attitude and mood was wrong, because I allowed myself to struggle. It's not wrong to struggle. It was wrong that I allowed myself to struggle without going to my head of household for help. And it was wrong that I allowed myself to struggle without asking for correction, because that is an expectation in our relationship. And so letting myself struggle like that, letting myself get to the point where I was really struggling with submission, that was what was wrong. And so that is what actually earned the correction. And really realizing that I need to lean in more. And to a certain extent, I leaned in way more and better than I have in the past by going to him and admitting that I was struggling with my submission towards him. He leaned in by immediately offering correction. We did the correction. It rectified the entire situation. I was soft and submissive towards him again. I apologized for letting myself get to that point. He accepted my apology. He told me that he loved me too much to let me struggle in that way, that, you know, he doesn't want me to be hardened towards him. He wants my softness. He wants my submission. And I reiterated that I want to give that to him because he deserves it, because he's my husband, because I love him. I want to show up in that way in our relationship for him. It ended up being a really impactful moment of growth in our relationship. It ended up like really driving us further towards our goals, and in a really positive way. And so that was one thing that I really took away from this, was that the more I lean in, the more positive outcomes that I can get from discipline, from my relationship. And the more positive outcomes I get, the further I can grow and develop as a wife, as a taken in hand, the further I can grow and develop in my submission. And those are all really positive things for me and for my relationship. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know down below what you thought, and I will talk to you next time.